So we just wrapped the series, 3-week series for Easter, which was really great for the evangelist inside of us all. But I hear this next series is going to be really critical for all of us as microchurch leaders, the Manifesto. Can you tell us a little bit about this next series and why we're choosing to go through the Manifesto at this point?
For those that don't know the story, the underground began as a sort of a laboratory in the developing world, and there were 9 of our core leaders who spent 9 months in the slums in Manila, Philippines, and were working there, but also rebooting, reorienting ourselves, getting out of the Western church for a minute, And at night we would sneak away and we would write and we would debate and pray. And to some degree, it's a generative process. It's like, what is it that God has put inside of us to say in our time, to be, to do, to live? And all of our frustration and angst at sort of being asked to live a version of Christianity we did not write, we did not even agree with to some degree. And even the idea of having a community of people that wasn't based on doctrine particularly, or as the single way that we define ourselves, we all believe X, Y, and Z, but actually that we will live a certain way, values. Like, what if we created a community that was unified by a set of values? And when we read those values, we go, that's me, that's what I want to be. I can remember being in the Philippines, sitting on that beach, feeling the weight of writing some sort of doctrinal statement for what would be the underground, for our movement, and just feeling like it's too much, I'm going to forget something. And wondering if a person should even do that, you don't write new doctrinal statements, you anchor yourself somehow in the historic realities of the church. And I remember sitting on that beach and reading, stumbling through, finding the Lausanne Covenant, that document, which is a centralizing document for us too, and crying, weeping on the beach, because it said so much of what it was I wanted to say and thought we should say. And even though it's an older document, it represents us. If you read the Nicene Creed, it moves you because, yes, you feel it, yes. But it also calls you back to something that you may have forgotten. Or maybe not forgotten, but just neglected, some deeper truth that you've neglected. And, both anchoring ourselves in the historic creeds of the church, but also having written this one document, which is probably our finest thing, our finest unifying document, with these 18 values that for us feel alive and contemporary. And they do carry in them some doctrine. But more than that, they're aspirational. They call us to something, to live a certain way. We don't just believe that there are such a thing as lost people or poor people. We believe that we must live a certain way in the light of that reality. And so it's inspirational, but it's aspirational. It's like, I want to be more. And when we sign off, that's the only thing we have in the underground that every single leader, every single microchurch must agree to, is this manifesto. And when we sign off on it, we're not saying that I live every single one of those values every single day, but we're saying I want to.
Right.
I was thinking of the movie Memento, where the guy every day loses his memory all over again. I think isn't it like 24 hours that he can remember? Yeah. And so he goes 24 hours and he can he's trying to solve a puzzle, or he's trying to solve a crime or something. And so he has to leave himself these notes, even tattoo important details that he's learning from day to day on his body, because he knows he's going to wake up the next morning and he's not going to remember that detail which he's worked hard to remember. So you write it down, the things that you must remember, you write down. You try to preserve in some sort of indelible form so that you never forget them. They're too important to forget. But by nature, we're creatures who forget, we're people who forget. The Manifesto is our memento. It's our 18 things we must never forget. We must always go back to. And we can't even hold them all in our hearts and minds at the same time. And we don't remember that we're forgetting them.
So what's the difference between us going through the Manifesto right now and how we would typically go through an entire book of the Bible?
Yeah, I think because it's not rooted in a text. There's no one text. That'll feel different because we're so biblically driven in our Crucible talk. So what I'm doing is I'm allowing each teacher, again, who is themselves a living sort of the living word, breathing these values, hopefully in their life, to choose a text to go with it. Of course, if you look at the Manifesto, each of these values is just riddled with text. We actually have a number of references that go to speak to that. So they have a lot to choose from in each of the values. And so they'll choose one core text to launch from. So it won't be, strictly speaking, it won't be just a topical thing. It'll still be a biblical study every single time we gather, but with that theme in mind. And of course, more voices, more diversity, more perspectives, and I think in one sense, more beauty, both in the topics that we'll tackle and also the people that will speak into them.
To the microchurch leader, would you have any kind of guidance for them for this series? Is there anything that you would ask them to be looking for in their own lives as we start to study these different components of the Manifesto?
I wonder if what would be healthy is over the course of the 18 weeks, both as individual leaders, but also in the communities that we lead, if we actually thought in terms of which of these am I missing? Which of these have I forgotten? Or which of these have I neglected in some way? And maybe even allowing it to be a catalyst in our lives, but also in the lives of our people and the people that we lead, to say, you know what, we're gonna apply some thought and some energy and some activism to rekindling the fire for this thing, because we may have lost it a little bit. And then of course I do hope, and I think this will happen naturally, that some of them will be affirmations, that you'll feel like, yeah, we really have given our heart and soul to this value, and it feels good to be reminded that is important and that affirmed in that, But I'm big on improving, growing, finding what it is, where I'm weak or what I'm missing, and shoring up that weakness and asking for more grace in that area. I think that'll be a real strength. If at the end of 18 weeks we really start feeling like all of those things are alive again in our communities, I feel like that'll reverberate into the city.